Hello, my name is Visgluigers and welcome to Armored Warfare and to the first Tier 4 tank review. And today we'll be reviewing the OF-40 main battle tank. So it's an Italian tank instead of German tank, which is quite interesting. And I will be going through its statistics and compare it to the other two Tier 4 main battle tanks, the Starship and the T-64. Also, I will be going more in depth on the armor and also how you kinda should play this thing. And at the end we have some gameplay and post thoughts. I'll just put here some timestamps so you can skip to whatever content you feel like watching. So anyways, the OF-40 is starting to be more like a main battle tank, more so than the Leopard 1. Now, why is that? Now, as we can remember, the Leopard 1 did not have a very good amount of armor. You can make occasional bounce from the gun mantlet or heavily angled surfaces, but other than that, everything will go straight through from the front of it, even from the gun mantlet quite often. But when we upgrade to when we take a step forward to the OF-40 at Tier 4, we start to have quite a decent amount of armor, which is really great. Now, in comparison to the other Tier 4 main battle tanks, the OF-40 has 1,375 hit points, which is actually the highest amount of hit points by a small margin. Of course, you can beef up the amount of hit points with retrofits, but I haven't personally added any retrofits at this tank yet. Now the the Starship has just a sliver and under, and the T-64 has 1,220, which is quite significantly less than the OF-40. So it's got a pretty decent amount of hit points to work with. Now the armor is a bit interesting. It's quite similar to the Leopard 1, in the idea that you should only show your turret. The hull in the Leopard 1 is garbage. The hull in the OF-40, while not being garbage, it's not very good either. You got a really decent slope from the front, but the lower plate is not that great. Now effectively, the armor on the Leopard 1's hull is the same as in the OF-40, except that we have a little bit of spaced armor on the sides, but it doesn't save you. Most of the times it doesn't save you at all, and you will be penetrated. But we do have a ridiculously good protection at the front of the turret. And also on the sides of the turret. The rear wheel, well, not being too bad, it's not a place where you want to be shot at. But the angle on this gun mantlet right here is very, very good. On pretty much any angle, if you are facing the opponent. If you shoot here, it's guaranteed to bounce. If you shoot here, well, it's 200 millimeters. And it's so well angled, so it's very, very, very likely to bounce. Now, I'm not sure if this is some kind of weak spot, but I'm pretty sure you can knock out observation devices and stuff if you shoot there. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like some people have shot me here and it has damaged quite some of my modules, but not necessarily doing any damage. So the turret armor is very good, and I will be going a little bit more in depth about it after the statistics. But all you need to know is that in comparison to the other Tier 4 main battle tanks, the hull is garbage. The turret, on the other hand, is pretty darn impressive. Now, mobility-wise, this tank has the best news on the main battle tanks. The top speed is 59.4, which is over 10 kilometers per hour more than the Starship, but a little bit less than the T-64, which is pretty interesting to me at least. But the acceleration in the OF-40 is significantly better than the other Tier 4 main battle tanks. 6.7 seconds to accelerate from stationary to 35 kilometers per hour, which is quite fast for a main battle tank. And I feel like the ground resistances are decent in this vehicle. We can't see them here, but it feels more mobile than the other slower main battle tanks does. Now, the vision is a little bit disappointing. It has only 351 meters of view range. Now, you can easily buff it up with the Commander. But the vanilla, even with all the upgrades researched and bought, it's still only 351. And if you do not have this thing here, Commander's Sight upgrade, it's only 310 meters, so this vehicle as a stock is very, very, very blind. So you can't go too much soloing unless you are at the very front of the action. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, like in true main battle tank fashion, the camo rating is abysmally bad, 0.1, which means that you will be spotted very, very, very easily. But let's go to the gun, which is, I feel like, a strong point of this vehicle. It's not hugely devastating, but it is very, very, very workable gun, especially when comparing it to its closest comparisons. Now, the alpha damage with its AP shells are 269 and with heat 368. So let's skip the Starship for a moment and compare it to the T-64. Now, the T-64 has all over 100 points of damage more with its AP shells and a little bit less than 100 alpha damage with its heat shells. And the penetration are quite close, are almost the same. The T-64 having just a slivering better AP penetration, but worse heat penetration. Now, what this means is that the OF-40 is actually pretty damn good at firing heat, but, well, not being as good firing AP, it's still pretty good. So its AP DPM is 2,219 in comparison to the 2,604. So it actually takes quite a bit hit on the DPM, but the heat is a little bit over 3,000, and on the T-64 it's almost 3,200. So this is the DPM monster, but it's still pretty decent in here. Now, what makes the difference is, of course, that the rate of fire is a lot better here than on the T-64. Which means that if you bounce a shell or two, it's not a so big deal than in the T-64. Also, the accuracy is quite a lot better, 0.13 in comparison to 0.16. And also, the aiming time is almost a second shorter at 2.7 seconds. So you deal the DPM much more reliably here. So, and that is why I pretty much like this tank a lot more. It just shreds lightly armored vehicles and keeps the gun singing. while as the T-64 can be in a bit of a trouble if it bounces or misses even 1 or 2 shells. It's not a huge difference in the reload times, but it's there, and you can certainly feel it. Also, the gun depression is really nice here. -9 degrees at the front, but only -1 at the back, because of the engine is so high. But overall you should be able to keep the combat at your front, because this vehicle is the most mobile of main battle tanks at tier 4. Now, a quick mention of the Starship. It doesn't fire any AP shells, it only fires heat, high explosive and anti-tank guided missiles. So it's a bit kinda different category altogether. So its DPM is not as good. And its rate of fire is almost half. But it's got a lot bigger shells. So I will just kinda skip it because it's so different, and we'll be going more depth in the Starship's own video. Now let's go more in depth in the armor right now. So we discovered earlier that the hull is not very good. Its lower plate is very weak. I don't think it's even 70mm. I think it's something like 50 or 60mm. I could be wrong. But shooting here with auto cannons and everything will just go through like a hot knife through butter. The upper plate can be a bit trickier, especially if you give it a bit of an angle like this, or like exaggerated angles like this. It will occasionally bounce, but when you're facing like tank destroyers and like these main battle tank caliber guns, they will go through frontally pretty easily. But from the front, on the side and the rear, because the hull is just crap. But that's why you get the better mobility. And because you get that mobility, you wanna go into the places where you can when you can hide the whole of the hull, so that you only show your turret. Preferably try to hide the turret ring also. It's not very big turret ring, it's actually quite tiny, but it's still there. Try to have some obstacles up to here, and this thing is almost impossible to dig out, because the gun mantlet is it's just incredibly well armored. Its turret cheeks are also incredibly strong at 180mm of armor, so you can't at this angle go through here. Even like this, it's pretty hard. Here you might be able to, but it's really hard. And the problem is that there ain't any weak spots. Most tanks have some kinda cupolas or even like some kinda small turrets or something that you can take advantage of. In the OF-40, there really isn't any, cause that's just some cloth. I don't think you can damage this. Well, you can blow the viewport off, but it won't damage the vehicle. This, I feel like, is spaced armor. I'm pretty sure you can't damage the vehicle if you shoot here, but of course if you shoot it like this, you can damage the vehicle. But yeah, it's very tricky to deal with it. One thing that you can do is that if you see the vehicle like this and it's hold down so that you might just a little bit see the turret ring, you can shoot here and set the engine on fire with HE. With AP, the angle is so high that it's most likely going to bounce. But if you have already high explosive or something like that loaded, shooting here can damage the vehicle quite well actually, because it doesn't have like any armor over here. But if you're facing OF-40, head on, hold down. Don't go shoot at it. Just try to approach it from a different angle. Leave it be, cause it won't go well unless it has like only 10 hit points and you can just spam HE at it and it will die even though you hit it in the gun mantlet or something. Just make a couple of points of splash damage and he's dead. That's okay. But if it's healthy OF-40, don't go from the front unless you can see the hull. My overall thoughts about this vehicle are quite mixed, really. It's almost like the Leopard 1, as it's a main battle tank and it starts to feel a lot more like a main battle tank. It's not as mobile as the Leopard 1 by no means, but it's still very, very mobile. But it's like, it's not mobile enough to feel like really mobile and that, so that you can just really go. No, you have to plan ahead, or then you will be just kind of left behind and just picked apart alone. So you have to constantly be thinking, what am I doing now, what am I doing next, and what am I gonna do after that. Not so much as in the a bit slower main battle tanks, but you still have to think about those things. But you also can take a couple of more hits that you couldn't have taken in the Leopard 1 at all. The armor is still something that you cannot truly count on, unless you can find good, rich positions where you only show your turret. Then you can be there like almost as long as you want, assuming there's no artillery on the way. Now the vision is truly a problem. You do want to have someone spotting for you, because this is not a vehicle that wants to go fully head on with its adversaries, because you want to have quite slow engagements at long range because the vehicle is so accurate. 0.13 accuracy at tier 4 is pretty darn good. It's no super sniper or anything, but it is pretty darn good. Now if you're facing like armored fighting vehicles, I guess you can go openly head on with them, but they will punish you because your hull is so bad. You really want to kind of find positions that you can take advantage of, but that's with every vehicle, but more so in this vehicle because its hull is just so vulnerable. Now its turret is not too fast to rotate, and I think I skipped that in the statistics. Now in the Leopard 1 it's almost 30 degrees a second. In here it's, well, with some buffing, a bit over 20. Without any buffs it's 19.87 degrees per second, which is something that is a bit lacking. So you have to kinda know where the enemies are, even though you're fairly mobile, but the turret just doesn't turn that well. And if a small vehicle comes behind you, you can't really point the gun down, and so that's a problem. But the tank does spin around decently fast actually. It's a fun vehicle. I had more fun in the OF-40 than in the Starship or the T-64. It kinda is like, it does everything quite well except the armor part. The hull is shite, but everything else is alright. Now, it does get all 4 retrofit slots, and I don't quite know yet what would be really good to put in, but adding some view range wouldn't be bad at all. Some acceleration maybe could be nice to beef up already quite good acceleration. And maybe you could beef up the gun so that you can take out your opponents a bit quicker. But I think if you want to beef up the things that it's bad at, beef up the view range. That's something you really want. The hit points, yeah, not a really bad idea, because you can't really play with your armor, except from the turret. You can play with that, but for the hull, it's bad news, so adding some extra hit points is not a bad idea at all. But if you wanna just play to your strengths, beef up the gun as much as you can and try to obliterate the enemy before they have a chance to shoot at you. Alright, so let's take next some quick look at how it does in actual gameplay. Alright, and here we have two different replays. This one is a PvE game and the second one will be a PvP game. Now, in here we have a tier 5 maximum PvE game in a relatively lengthy map. Now, what you can immediately notice is that it is a quite fast vehicle. Well, the T-72 and the T-64 do quite well keep up with the OF-40, but it is very mobile main battle tank. Now, what I'm initially trying to do is to hide my hull behind these rocks and totally dunk my first shot into the rock. But this is what I myself pretty much tend to do. Try to keep a little bit longer distance to the engagements whenever possible and try to only show the turret. Now I'm holding my fire here because there's no guarantee I will go through with the heat I had, so as soon as I got flat side of its engine deck, I made the shot. Now I could have loaded AP shells, but I just was so juicy to take out that Sheridan first. But here I will load an AP shell after the heat one just to guarantee another penetration. And this is something you have to kinda work on with every single tank, but I think more on with the main battle tanks. Because the heat shells do have, well, I say quite significantly, but it's not hugely different AP or armor penetration values, but they do have quite much worse when taking into account that people start to have better quality armor, meaning not steel armor. So quite a lot of armors tend to have better armor values against heat. So, you know, use heat when you can, but when it's not enough, you have to go with the AP. And in these low tiers, and tier 4 is relatively low, the heat is quite viable. Now, for instance, this Leopard 2, I was lucky to have his side, but I already preloaded the AP as the second round. And you can do that by just simply pressing once the ammunition type you wanna load next. If you press it twice, it will immediately start to reload that ammunition. Now, here it's obviously just shoot heat. And the position I've taken is quite passive. I could be a little bit maybe in the forward, but I feel like this is a nice little ditch that I can use to engage all sides that the enemies are coming from. Since they're coming from more than one direction, I feel like it's safe to just lay a little bit back, and if they would return fire to my position, it would be most likely that they will hit my turret and not guarantee a penetration. although this position is not perfect, because it does show my hull just a little bit, but luckily the enemies are not so interested at shooting me at the moment, but it's still a really good way to play the game if you just play as if you are being targeted all of the time, so you will not get so much unfavorable surprises. Now I know at this stage that the next cap area will be over here, and here's a couple of enemies, so I will just go before the rest of the team so that I might get a little bit of spots, and you know, they're gonna handle their current objective, which is nearing its end. And I get spotted here, which indicates that yes, there are enemies, and I do quite unluckily get hit and penetrated from the side of my tank. With that angle, I would have thought that it would have bounced, but you know, they could have gone from the front and it would have most likely gone in anyway. So yeah. But now again, we have a lovely position, and they are not even trying to shoot me, because the AI knows pretty much that it's not gonna go in, so they're not even trying. And they are pretty much higher tier vehicles. Most of them are tier 6s and 5s, although it's a fragile Stingray 2, but still, they are higher tier vehicles than I am. So, even though the Leopard line isn't at the first very well armored, well, in the OF-40, we start to get quite significant amount of turret armor, so the AI will not even, most of the cases, try to shoot you into the turret. And the DPM of the heat shells are just amazing. As long as you can use the heat, they will do a lot of damage to the enemy, because it has so small reload. And it's relatively accurate as well. So the only thing you have to kind of worry about is to get to this kind of position that you can just stay hidden pretty much and just keep pumping these shots. And obviously it's pretty easy against the AI, because they will quite suicidally just try to go to the cap circle and you can just snipe everything. But we'll see how it works in PvP in a moment. Now here's the mobility again. It's like I could believe this is a medium terrain. So for a main battle tank to shift this easily, well, it's not like it's not a really mobile vehicle, but for a main battle tank, I feel like this is a very nice place to go. If you don't like traditional slow heavy tanks and main battle tanks, I think you should try the Leopard 3, because it is very satisfying if you do value mobility and DPM. Now to this results screen of this current match, nothing surprising. It was the daily double, so I did get more XP. I don't think I did get any extra credits, but I did get the most amount of XP on the team. I did slightly more damage than the T-72, getting the most damage done. Overall, this was a pretty good team, except that the BMD-2 just had to YOLO pretty much at the halfway mark, but you know, it was a decent team, nothing to complain about. And then we have the PvP game, and it is also a tier 5 match. Now, overwhelming majority of the vehicles are tier 4. We only have 3 tier 5s at the enemy team, and we have, quite curiously, 4 tier 5 vehicles in our team. I don't know how the game actually balances like the artillery, tank destroyers, and all this kind of that we have one tier 5 more than the enemy teams. I have no idea, but we'll see what happens. Now, again, the mobility, it's pretty easily goes to 50 kilometers per hour, so it is very, very fast. I'm racing with a Sheridan, which is a light tank. But because of the mobility, I kind of want to wait here. Even though I kind of would want to go a bit forward, but I don't want to be left alone. So, especially with the Leopard tree, because you have so thinly armored sides and rear, and even front of the hull, you really do not want to go rushing forward alone at least. But now I kinda could go. But I'm a bit cautious because I don't know any good places where I could go hold down. Now the place with the Leopard 1A5 is pretty good. And I see in the minimap that he is going to be under quite a lot of pressure. So I'm rushing to aid him. I do get spotted, but I got so much momentum that no one had any chance of actually taking a snapshot at me. Now I do dunk the shell because there's a rock or something just in the way. But between the two of us, we should be quite strong against this Sheridan. Now I did not have heat loaded, which I think was a really big mistake. But it could have been possible that the heat would have bounced because of the extreme angle I was hitting the Sheridan. Now, if the heat would have bounced, the AP would have been a much better option, but I don't know if it would have bounced. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't have. But now I do have heat loaded. Now I had a missile lock for a moment, but I'm pretty sure it was meant for someone else, and there are quite a bit of swing fires, actually only one on the enemy team, but I'm pretty sure it was from the swing fire. And now I switched to AP again, just to guarantee some penetrating shots to this T-64 who has totally YOLO'd alone. Now I did have quite a bit problems at this stage of the game. I don't know, was it a server lag or was my computer lagging or what, but I had huge problems when the T-64 came. But luckily I managed to kill him without taking, well, almost any damage. I took 30 damage from ramming, but other than that, just bounced one shell. And there's that pesky swing fire, deal with him. And then there's an enemy OF-40, and I didn't quite fast enough to deal with him, but the swing fire got him, which is all good. Now I was very much afraid that I would be surrounded at this stage, but our team has been doing so great, and there's pretty much no one except this artillery left. And here we see the armor. I don't think he even hit us, and he made 212 damage to us, which is quite a lot for a miss. He didn't destroy any modules, which was great, but just to keep in mind that even though this is a main battle tank, its hull is quite fragile. Now there's another artillery, but I'm just a little bit too slow. It is a main battle tank after all, and most of it was probably my decision making, which is shite at sometimes, and the tank destroyer just swings around and snaps the kill. And the rest of the replay, I pretty much don't get to do jack. But to summarize this replay, I did get it pretty good. I didn't face any of the tier 5s, and most of the vehicles I met didn't have that much armor. The T-64 has a decently good amount of armor, but not from the side, and the player, maybe he had a brain fart or a YOLO moment, I don't know. But anyone should be able to take that kind of player pretty easily down. Now, if I would have been facing tier 5 and 6 main battle tanks, the penetration would be a little bit underwhelming. And the positions I took weren't that great. For, the being held down. They were okay, but nothing too great. Now, the mobility played in this game quite a good factor, so that I was able to race and get the swing fire and the artillery and so on and so on. But nothing major. And again, I'm repeating myself, but I feel like this tank is a really good pick for those who don't like main battle tanks. At least the Leopard 1, the OF-40, and the next one, which will be the Leopard 1A5, play pretty much the same. And they're very mobile, very accurate, and, well, in exception of the Leopard 1, really good turret armor. And they are something that I particularly like, but they can be extremely frustrating. How? Well, if you have a city map or a flat map, so that it's very hard to go to hold down positions, you're gonna get raped by everything. Artillery will kill you. Main battle tanks will laugh at your armor, while you're going to have a relatively hard time penetrating them from the front, and most armored fighting vehicles with their huge DPM and lowish penetration characteristics will also go through your hull and just kill you in moments. So the Leopard line is not without its faults, but they're really, really fun tanks to drive. Now, personally, I do have my OF-40 in the garage. Well, half of the reasons are because I wanna have like every single tank. I wanna collect every single tank that there are in the trees in my garage, just because reasons. And half of it's because I really did quite much enjoy it. Now, the Starship was like fun for a moment, but it's pretty much like a one-trick pony. You have the huge gun, and that's about it. The T-64 is like, well, it's not as mobile as you'd like. The gun doesn't have quite as much alpha damage as you'd like, and the armor is mediocre. I feel like the OF-40 is more if you really like to be a bit more mobile, to have a little bit better accuracy, and be a bit different and not just mediocre at everything. That's why I like it, and that's why probably you could like it as well. But if you don't value so much mobility and you just want to have a really rounded up armor and very punchy gun, then the OF-40 and I think the whole of the Leopard line, at least from the start, is probably not gonna be your thing at all. But if you want flexibility, this is what you should probably take a close look at. Now, I hope you liked this replay. It was quite fastly put together, so it wasn't very in depth, and I didn't have too much time to do like a really good. I didn't have a huge amount of time to do the research on the stats, and I did skip a thing or two here and there. But honestly, I'm so busy at the moment that I don't have time to go correct everything. I still hope you enjoyed this replay. I hope you enjoyed this review. It was like a mixed. It was quite long, more in depth than the quick replays, but I personally feel it wasn't in depth enough to be a fully fleshed out review. I will try my best to have the upcoming reviews to be more in depth, more fine tuned and complete. But for me, this is more like a passion project, and I kinda do things as they go, and I make sometimes mistakes, sometimes I don't, and that's just the way it goes right now. So I guess this is my way of saying thank you so much for watching, and if you do enjoy my content, I would greatly appreciate if you would put a like in the video so I know I'm doing things right and I can continue doing stuff how they are right now. Anyways, thank you so much. I hope I'll see you in the next video.